Hi guys, I'm Mario Fratto and this is Making the Case. Joe Biden's got himself in hot water again. This time he made some controversial comments on the Breakfast Club with Charlamagne the God. He said that basically if you need to decide between him and Trump, then you ain't black. Let's take a listen to that first and then we'll talk about it.
Long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Now, aside from being very awkward, that's really the truth as far as the Democrats go. This was something that Kanye was trying to push back against, basically saying that there's no diversity of thought in the Democratic Party. They believe that if you're part of one race or one group, then you should think a certain way. And if you're part of another group, then you should think another way. And that's been going on for a long time, but Joe Biden actually finally said it out loud. Now, imagine if Donald Trump said something like this. Imagine if he said, if you need to decide between me and Biden, then you ain't white. Or if he said the exact same thing and said, if you need to decide between me and Biden, you ain't black. The media would be having a field day with this. But all of a sudden now it's okay, and Joe Biden's the judge of blackness. I guess Joe Biden gets to hand out the black cards now, and basically whatever he says goes. And he really didn't get pushed back on during the interview. So I guess somebody needs to tell these black Trump supporters that they ain't black anymore because Joe Biden said so. And why is it that Joe Biden gets so defensive when he's challenged at all on race? Take a look at him back in 2008 when he was running, when he was asked how he would do in the South, and this is how he said he could relate to Southern voters.
30 seconds or less. What kind of a chance would a northeastern liberal like Joe Biden stand in the South if you were running in Democratic primaries against Southerners like Mark Warner and John Edwards?
Better than anybody else. And you don't know my state. My state was a slave state. My state is a border state. My state is the 8th largest black population in the country. My state is anything from a northeast liberal state.
Now that was a pretty weird way to think that he could relate to people. I don't know what that was supposed to mean, but he also always says that he's from the 8th largest black population in his state. Now, that really doesn't mean anything, and that's as a percentage, but take a look at the other states that are actually have a higher percentage of black population. You have states like Alabama and Georgia and Mississippi. So that doesn't mean that there's not racism there. In fact, you could argue that those states have the worst past when it comes to race. So I don't know why he brings that up. I mean, I guess if Donald Trump wanted to, he could say he's from the city with the largest black population. So that means he's does well with black voters because he can relate to them. I don't really see that argument. Now, during the same interview, Joe Biden also said that he's the only candidate that's been endorsed every time by the NAACP. Well, the NAACP actually came out with a statement saying that they don't endorse anybody and that they've never endorsed Joe Biden. So he had to lie about that to try and prove his credibility with the black community. And if you look back to when Biden came into the Senate in 1972, 1973, the Senate was still majority Democratic in the South. Most of those southern states and states that had Jim Crow, they were still controlled by Democrats. Take a look at the House map from back in 1972. And then even in 1976, look how the majority of the South actually voted when it came to the presidency. Now, during the Democratic debates this year, Biden had actually bragged how he got things done with segregationists, and he even joked that they didn't call him boy. Now, apparently he thought that was funny, but senators like Kamala Harris and Cory Booker didn't take kindly to that. In fact, Kamala Harris pushed back on Joe Biden during the debates because he was actually in support of keeping busing to schools segregated. And she said she was part of the second class of integrated busing that Joe Biden actually wanted to prevent. So his record there really isn't too good. Joe Biden actually wrote the 1994 crime bill. That was the most devastating piece of legislation for the African American community in the last 30 years. And he had this to say about it at the time. When speaking about George H.W. Bush's crime plan, Biden thought it didn't go far enough because it did not, and I quote, include enough police officers to catch the violent thugs, not enough prosecutors to convict them, not enough judges to sentence them, and not enough prison cells to put them away for a long time. And rather than apologize for that, Biden actually doubles down and he still defends it to this day, which he just did in this interview. Take a listen to this here.
No, I gotta ask you though, you know, why so much resistance on admitting the crime bill and other legislation you are a part of was damaging to the black community? Because we had Hillary on a few years ago, and Miss Clinton said that the crime bill we made a lot of mistakes with that, and she wanted to atone for that by becoming the next president. Like,
She was wrong.
Now, thankfully, Donald Trump actually is helping to reverse some of that damage. He passed the First Step Act for prison reform, and hopefully that's going to help, and it already has. But Joe Biden is still unapologetic for what he's done. And if you look back to 2008, when Barack Obama was selecting his running mate, Joe Biden at the time had this to say about Obama. I mean, you've got the first sort of mainstream African American who is articulate and bright and clean and a nice looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook, man. So what is that supposed to mean about the rest of African Americans? They're not bright or clean? I don't really understand why he said that. And I think that's part of the reason that Obama picked him, crazy enough, because Obama had this to say about selecting Joe Biden. Barack Hussein Obama is change enough for most people. So apparently, Obama actually picked Joe Biden because he figured it would help him with more traditional Democrats in conservative states, and that they would be more comfortable with him because he had an older white man with a record on race like Joe Biden's. Now, say what you want about Donald Trump, but his record's nowhere near as bad as Joe Biden's. I think Joe's going to have a tough time turning out black voters come this fall, and rightfully so, because his record is not good to say the least. Guys, if you like this video, please like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and stay tuned for more. Thanks, guys.